Well, good morning. Do we have any visitors this morning? From where? Harrisburg. Welcome. Anybody else? You're not the governor, are you? Oh, okay. Any other visitors? Okay, well, welcome to all of you. Today in the gospel, Jesus gives us what's called a parable, which is a story, which the story's purpose is always to give us a deeper understanding of God's will and God's love for us. The story is usually a story that's very understandable and uses imagery that we all understand. And Jesus, in his many stories, uses all kinds of images. Today, he uses the image of a person who sows seed, that is, who spreads seed to grow. And the seed in this story represents God's gratuitous love for us. It represents his grace, his concern that he offers grace to everyone. The field, the place in which the seed is sown, however, is you and I. And he gives four options of human nature. Jesus was an astute student of human nature. And he lays out four possibilities of those of all of us as we receive God's grace. Now, it's not a once and for all time. It happens all the time. God is continually gracing us. And Jesus' point is this, that if we are to truly absorb God's grace, if we are truly to allow God to enter into our hearts and begin to be the very source of all faith and energy within us, then we have to do some work. So he points out these four ways. He said sometimes grace is dumped, or seed is dumped on the pathway. Well, what happens when it's on the pathway? People trample it, birds eat it, it doesn't grow any roots at all. That's sometimes us. Our lives sometimes are so busy, our lives are sometimes so absorbed with other things that there's no time. There's no place for grace to take root. There's no ability for God's love to be effective in our lives because we don't give it the space. So we need to take his parable and hold our lives up against this. The second, he says, some falls on rocky soil. And that rocky soil has a little bit of soil, but not very much. And so the plant will bloom quickly, but it has no roots. And so it will blow over, it will be destroyed, it won't last very long. That's some of us too. People who get all excited about something but cannot follow through. People who say, okay, on Monday I start my diet, and Wednesday I forget. That's the people who say, oh yeah, you know what, Father, you ought to do this. And when I say, fine, you're on the committee, that's the last we see of them. People, some of us cannot follow through. And the same with, oh yeah, we want God's love. We want God's grace in our lives, but we just don't want to follow through. We just don't want to get to church on time. We just don't want to take the time to pray. We just don't want to let other things be less important than our relationship to God. Then he says there are seed that's thrown amongst the thorns. And that represents the people who are so entangled with other agendas, who have other false gods, that there just isn't room. And so their faith grows, but so do their false gods. And when push comes to shove, it's the false gods who win. The thorns, which are greed, obsession with wealth, obsession with power, obsession with things that are not religious, will ultimately choke out what we know to be true and good. There's a saying that Absolute power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts, and power corrupts, absolutely. That when we feel that we are gods unto ourselves, when we feel that we are untouchable, it's then that we will fall. It's then that there is no room for God, and it's then that we will tumble. The fourth place is fertile ground. Ground that has been honed and fertilized and watered and is ready to receive God's grace fully. And that's our choice. If we want to be fertile ground, if we want to experience the power of God's grace, then we need to take time to hone the garden of our hearts. We need to find silence. We need to find prayerfulness. We need to find peacefulness. We need to invite God into our lives. Get rid of the distractions. Get rid of all those things that cause us to go in directions contrary to what the gospel teaches. But the choice is yours and mine. It's only we who can do it. It's only we who can prepare the patch to receive God's grace. So, the parable is about you and me. The parable is about our own lives. And it's we who have to decide where we are. Do you go to church every day and do you pray and do you feel no different? Maybe you need to look at your garden, because maybe there's still too much distraction. Maybe there's still too much lack of roots. Maybe there's still too many competing lights and thorns in your life. Jesus said, if the ground is fertile, then you will produce 100-fold. That you will produce goodness. You will produce kindness. You will produce generosity and love. So do a little measuring. How is your generosity? How is your kindness? How is your patience? How is your love? Whatever it might be, if it's not very good, it's because you haven't yet honed the soil of your heart. Find place for God. Prepare the place and invite His grace, and you will be blessed with peace, with kindness, compassion, generosity, and with patience. Look at your hearts. Jesus is speaking about you and me. This isn't some fanciful story about somebody else. It's about you and me and how we live our spiritual lives. What does the soil of your heart look like right now? Are you focused? Are you prepared? Are you inviting God, or are there just too many conflicting things going on? This is an invitation by Christ. If you want to be a person of faith, if you want to see goodness reproduce itself in your life, then prepare the garden and invite God. Be at peace.